So you just want to tell me real quick again about what grade is?
Yeah, so the Grade Network, what we do is we hook K through 12 teachers up with college students studying to be teachers, and they'll grade their papers for them. And so typically, what that looks like is we go to the school, we basically sign them up for a package of grading hours. They distribute those hours out to all their English teachers. And then throughout the year, as they have more assignments, essays, assignments they want to send out to their students, they'll collect them and then have us grade those papers for them. So unlike fully automated grading solutions that only work for multiple choice or math kind of questions, we grade full essays. So short answers, essays, long written content that at some point computers might grade, but not anytime in the immediate future.
So no machine learning AI is doing this. You actually have people grading.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, long term, the whole natural language processing mixed with some kind of AI is going to augment or help our graders. I don't know if it'll ever completely replace them for every essay, but maybe there's situations where we can, do some of the easier work that way. Yeah. It's like we're not just grading on like grammar and spelling. We're grading for like the actual content, like the themes of an essay that's written about a piece of literature, and that's so hard for computers to sort of break down into digestible bits at this point.
Right.
Someday, once again, maybe we'll be there 5, 10 years. I don't know,
Yeah.
but at this point, we kind of position ourselves as this manual, the sort of manual solution because the automated ones won't be good enough for a while.
Yeah, and there's always that like in between of the hybrid space where you can build technologies to assist you
You got
students.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, even if automated grading does become a reality, everyone who does it is going to need a large data set of real graded essay papers. And that's what we're going to have that, upstarts in 5 years when this becomes more possible won't have. So I think we'll be in a good spot to do it, even if we aren't today.
Do you think technology is reshaping education in the sense that the biggest brands, the MITs, the Dukes and stuff, that they'll kind of die out, or and then it's going to be an exchange of more real value education, like being able to go and work with a doctor. How do you think that's going to play out?
That's a good question, Joel. I mean, the student debt crisis that we're entering into is massive. I mean, this is billions and billions of dollars that the U.S. owns in debt that people who graduate with some degrees will never make enough money to pay off. I mean, if you have $100,000 in loans and you're going to make 35 to 50K a year, how do you ever get to a point where you can pay those off and buy a house or a car or whatever it is you want to save for your kids to go to college? It just is going to get unreal, and I don't know what the solution is going to be. I mean, I do really appreciate. I went to college, and it took me 6.5 years, but I did get a 4-year degree, and
Yeah.
I think it was beneficial for me. Do I think everyone needs it? No, I don't. And do I think you need it? Let's say a 4-year computer science degree to be a good software engineer? No, I don't. So I think there's a lot of room for people to for this I don't know, something's going to shake out there, and I don't know if it's going to look like online courses or if it's going to look like some kind of augmented classrooms where
Ooh.
fewer teachers can teach more people. We'll see, but it'll be this is a real. It's going to be a real problem in our lifetime, I think.
I think it's it. Well, for me, I don't think it's a. Well, the debt's definitely a problem. It's a problem when I'm at a restaurant and all the servers have higher education than I do, right?
Right? Yeah.
That's a
Totally.
problem. And
Yep.
yeah, so I think that's kind of when I started noticing it, is when I started talking to the waiters and waitresses, and they all have 4-year degrees in business, and
Yep.
they all have college debt, and they're all, like you said, they're making that like 30 to 50. And the answer to the question that you asked, and I know it was rhetorical, is what are they going to do? How are they going to pay it off? It's math. They're not. They're going to die
Yeah, they're
with the debt.
not. Yeah, and in some states that debt can even get passed to your kids, which is to
Are you
me
kidding me?
even more
That's
insane.
a thing.
No, yeah, yeah. I'll send you some articles. You can put them in here. I have like a huge list of articles I collect on the student debt crisis because it really is the bubble of our time that is no one's talking about. I don't think, or not enough people are talking about.
Oh wow.
But yeah, it's huge, and even if you start to forgive it, that just means that's money the U.S. government doesn't get, and that we all pay in taxes. So at some point, the rubber's got to meet the road.
Everyone's talking about the Bitcoin bubble. Let's talk about the education bubble, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's only a few thousand. Like, I don't know how many people invest in Bitcoin, but there's say it's thousands of people, and they're mostly in the upper middle level brackets of income anyway. So they're not like it's not going to hurt them when they lose a few $1,000s on Bitcoin.
Right.
This is going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars for millions of people who graduate from college, which is going to be huge.
Let's run away from that conversation.
Yeah,
What are
right.
your
Let's get to something happy.
I know. Let's bring it back up, people. Eye of the tiger, eye of the tiger, or Eminem. So
Yeah.
I got to put the hoodie back on now. What are your responsibilities as the? So everyone's always asking me, "Hey, what are the responsibilities of a CTO?" And I always respond to them, "Look, it completely varies based on where your business at, what your business needs,
Yep.
what your type of product is, what your industry. Everything varies. There's obviously some core principles that flow. But for you, how do you
Yep.
see your responsibilities as CTO at the Graide network?"
Yeah, good question. I wrote an article on this probably back in 2000. Oh, I think it was maybe 15 or something. But it was kind of, I was at another startup and I was in a similar role where I was kind of like only engineer slash just hiring my first couple engineers and like moving from, only doing all code to like managing a team. And I worked with some offshore, people in India as well. And so I was doing just like a wide variety of things. And I was very, I don't know. I think at first I was very uncomfortable and unsure of myself. Like, is this normal? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And as I started reading more and talking to more people in similar roles with startups and small companies, I realized that this is actually there's a whole kind of industry of people who do this. I don't know if, we identify as an industry or whatever, but like the role is varied. So everything from architecture and planning even up to like product planning is on my responsibility list. I've had contractors come in and help with design or sometimes with individual projects and things, but typically all that's kind of in my responsibility area. And then moving into actually writing code, actually figuring out what the technical architecture of our systems are going to be, and then doing a lot of that is on my plate. And then making sure that every engineer on my team is also able to work with the specifications we drew up and all that, and make sure they're staying busy, but also have all their questions answered and all that kind of thing. And then finally getting stuff tested, getting pull requests merged, all that's kind of my responsibility as well. So for me at the Graide network for the last year and a half, I've actually been the only engineer, although I've had a contractor on and off as well. But at my last role with Packback, I was managing a team. And so the roles have varied a bit, but to be honest, it's kind of everything. And then when you have a team, it's filling in the gaps wherever the team lacks experience. So for example, we never had a dedicated DevOps person because we were just too small to justify it. And so my role ended up being, do a little code, do a little this, do a little that, and then also you're going to do DevOps because no one else knows how to. So why it varies a lot, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to, and this is something you mentioned on your blog a lot, and I really appreciate this, is like, what does the business need from the technology, and how do we sort of merge these two worlds together? So taking everything that the business needs for the customers that we have and that is essential to our growth, and saying, how can the technology we could build or have built help it and improve it, and kind of tying it into key metrics like that. That's all sort of in the space of the CTO at this phase of company.
Yeah, because that's the easiest. I always like to look at where I get lost because I can't help getting lost. But what I can do is pay attention to when it happens and minimize the time between it happening and me getting back on track. Right.
Yep.
So I notice that whenever my brain shifts from business and value to writing a feature or a spec or something like that, it's like impossible for me to maintain both simultaneously. It's either I'm
Very hard.
writing the
Yep.
code or I'm not. So the way I do it is I use the the in and out macro micro approach where like I'll go write and then I'll come back out and remind myself of the business stuff. I'm a big fan of if you look at my personal calendar, there's like 800 events a month because
Yep.
I put reminders in my phone that recur, like don't forget about this, like Elon Musk thinks principles comes up like every 2 weeks, like thanks for like
I like
yeah,
that.
people ask me,
Yeah.
oh, what's the advice? And I mean, like, it's find the 8 things that like really mean something to you, like deep down, and then putting them in front of you like all the time. Like that's
Yeah.
the hard part. It's the hard part is not the advice or knowing what to do. The hard part is taking that simplistic idea and putting it in front of you over and over and over and over and over.
Yep, and I have a very similar system. I think, yeah, I use a mix of Trello boards with calendar reminders and emails to myself that all just kind of like force me to remember these certain things at certain times, and force me to reschedule time to do things like, we talked about earlier, like keeping up with my network. I have to schedule time to do that every month or so. And so all that stuff, if you can automate it to a point where you don't have to keep it in the forefront of your brain, saves you a lot of trouble as your responsibilities change and everything else.
Absolutely. So right now, you're the only developer or the only engineer at Grade Network, but you have contractors come in and assist you with things from time to time. Is that right?
Yep. And I'm working on actually making my first full-time hire here in the next month. So we'll have somebody else coming on soon to onboard. But yeah, that's the situation.
Excellent. So that'll give you some more time to do things like speaking and writing. I noticed you do a good amount of writing. You're doing some speaking now. That's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of my projects this year. Sort of was to get into speaking and learning what it took to get to conferences and get basically get your way paid to go to conferences, but also get to like learn from other people, get feedback on my ideas. And so most of the talks I've been doing are pretty technical and kind of specific to certain things, but I've been sort of experimenting with a lot. So I applied to probably close to 30 or 40 conferences in the last 6 months, and I got accepted to, I want to say 5, and scheduling didn't work out with one, so I'm doing 4 of them. And so, yeah, it's exciting. It'll be fun to see how that goes the rest of the year.
How far in advance do you have to apply for a conference?
About 6 months in most cases. It can vary. Some of the smaller conferences, maybe it's as early as 3 or 4 months away when you apply, but a lot of the bigger ones are 6 months to a year even.
Do they set it up to where they say, okay, you apply for a talk, and if we choose you as a talk, we pay for A, B, and C, or do they set it up to where you apply and then you have to negotiate it?
Yeah, usually conferences are pretty willing to, they have sponsors, so they're pretty willing to cover air travel, your cost of the conference. Usually they'll cover a hotel as well. There's slight variations, and I've been trying to be more selective and just pick the ones that'll cover everything so I don't have to pay out of pocket. We're such a small company at the Graide Network that we don't have a budget for conferences yet. So but yeah, most of the time they'll pay for almost everything, at least the better ones. And it's that part is great, but it also, for me, I have friends all over the country. So for example, in November I got accepted to speak at a conference, and so when I didn't take their hotel stipend, instead just went and stayed with my friend because I hadn't caught up with him since college. So
Nice.
there's all sorts of other pros out there. You get to go travel and visit other people too.
Yeah. So when are you speaking next?
Next up, next week, I'm speaking at Code Mash, which is in Sandusky, Ohio. And that's a pretty eclectic conference for web developers and software engineers. They cover all sorts of languages and topics. I think it seems like there's at least 5 or 6 tracks of learning at a time going. So it's very, a lot going on, which will be cool because there'll be a lot of stuff to see. It's also challenging because I have to pick like a favorite track to go, or a few, one talk per hour to go see. And that's always tough, but yeah.
How many people are going to be there at the whole
Oh, I don't
conference?
know, actually. Yeah, that's a good question. I imagine it's got to be in the hundreds or low thousands because it's a big one, but I don't know for sure. You'd have to look on their
And
website.
there will be like 3 people in your room.
Yeah, right. That's well, you laugh, Joel, but they put me at the last time slot on a Friday. And so I have a feeling that a lot of people will be checked out by then,
Did you get it
especially because
early?
I'm talking. Well, it's fine. I mean, I'm totally like very early on in my process of doing this, so I'm not offended by any means. Like getting accepted is awesome to
Dude,
me, so
that's
I'm
the
not worried
win.
about
The win is going through the
it. Yeah,
process. When you're the
yeah,
keynote, it's you're done. It's like you've done it.
yeah,
You grind. You went through the grind. You had the struggle. You had to hustle. You went through
yeah,
everything, and you made it to the top. And now it's just like, all right, I'm at the top now. Like, so this is the fun part. Taking the crap
yeah.
spot and
Yep.
buying the bus ticket because you can't afford airfare.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, but it'll be fun, and even last time when I gave this talk in November, I got a lot of great feedback from people in the audience and learned things from other speakers as well about specific to the topic I was giving a talk on, and so it's great to get feedback on your ideas and kind of hear other people validate them as
Oh,
well.
tell me about it. That's what I've been so pumped about the blog is because, I'm sitting here on this collection of writings and I'm, talking to my editor and stuff. And like, this was a couple months ago before we started putting content out. And I'm like, I know that this is valuable. Like, I know that it is, but I'm still nervous.
Yeah.
'Cause-
It is. I think you'll get over that pretty quickly. It seems like you already have a bit, but I think I've been writing on my blog probably for 5 years or so, and at first it was a little intimidating. It was a little like, "What am I doing? I have no qualifications for this." And even now, I don't know that I do, but I've stuck with it. Just I feel more comfortable with it, even if I'm not really the smartest person in the world.
But you know what? That's interesting because I messaged out to every CTO that had registered for the book, right? And I said,
Hmm.
hey, I looked them up. But there was like 2,000 of them, so it took me about 100 people a day for 20 days. It was like all I did, like
Wow.
mad scientist
Yeah.
style. So I looked them up, read about them, said, all right, cool. This person looks awesome. Let's ask them if they have any experience that they want to share, like come on the show, right? So I started messaging out. And I got two types of responses back. The first one is, yeah, I'd love to. And I was like, woo, that's awesome. And then the second one was, I don't know if I'd have anything valuable to share. My experience is going from developer to CTO. It's probably, rare, right?
Yeah.
So I started, I collected all these responses and I'm looking at them and my mind was blown away. And there's not really any studies or anything like that because it's just such a new exploding field, right? But
Yep.
from the numbers I've gathered and the people I've talked to and all this great stuff, we're looking at 60 to 80% of all CTOs are developer to CTOs.
Hmm.
Blew my
Yep.
mind.
Yeah.
I was thinking they were all like, medicine company executives and it's just on the 60th floor, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, there are by numbers a lot more small businesses than there are large ones. But I find that true as well, Joel. I'm in a couple different CTO sort of meetup groups here in Chicago, and at both of them, most of us are pretty new to the whole management thing and the whole executive level thing, and we're all just like figuring out how it is to make that transition away from being just a hands-on developer. I say just a hands-on developer, but it just feels like a totally different world.
That's honestly one of the biggest themes in my book because, and it wasn't even intentional. It's just what happened because I meet with these CTOs, I work with some venture capital companies, and they go in and inject capital, and usually it's a developer and a business person or a marketing person, and they're going to build a business from their MVP or prototype, right? And the hardest thing for the developer to do is to become the CTO because they'll wear the
Yeah.
label, oh, I'm a CTO. And then when you start probing them about CTO things, they're just like, I don't know. And so one of the pivot points or the crossroads that I've seen recurring over and over is
Yep.
directly tied to their ability to re-quantify their value. So
Yeah. Totally. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I was going to say you have to measure yourself in completely different metrics than you did as a developer. So lines of code are not important. The quality of the code coming out. I mean, that does matter, but it's also not your number one metric. Like what matters is keeping the people that work for you happy and keeping productivity high and keeping in line with what the business needs. And so it becomes a totally different mentality. And when I was managing a team and less of the, wasn't in this role where I'm the only developer, what I would do is block out some time in the day to code and then other times of the day to do basically just people and management type stuff. And I had to have a separation because those two things you kind of mentioned are very different in your head, and keeping them both on tap at the same time is almost impossible.
yeah, it's a big culture shift, not just in our world, but in the global economy where in the 50s, we imagined that you would go get a job and work at the same company for 60 years and retire. You had one job, you did one thing, and that was it, right?
Yep.
Now we're in an economy where people are programming in the afternoon, Ubering at night, baristaing 3 days a week. Like you have these multiple ideas and these multiple skills that you use, and that's just a totally different economy.
Totally.
And one of ours, the one that we're running into, is that transition from developer into
Yep.
CTO. Yeah. So
Yep.
what are you talking about first of all, I know it's Code Mash now,
Hmm.
but this whole week I've been calling it Code Smash. I don't know why I've been so pumped up. Like every day I'm like, yo, we're gonna like talk to Carl from Code Smash. And then
Yeah.
this morning Jake's like, dude, you gotta stop saying that. It's Code Mash. And I'm like, oh man, it needs to be. We need to, and then the icon needs to be a fist. So I'm gonna talk to the branding people over there. It's gonna be called Code
Right. Yeah.
Smash.
Send them an email. I don't have much sway yet. Maybe next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm talking about. So I have a few talks kind of that I've been submitting. One of them, the one that's gotten the most acceptances and has kind of, I guess, so I guess it ends up being the most popular from that perspective. But it's about testing distributed systems. So for the last few years, when I've been working with startups, we've built stuff on microservices and so the technical challenge there is not only do you have to test each microservice internally, but you also then have to test them in conjunction with one another. And those testing across those boundaries is to me the most interesting and challenging part of architecting tests for that sort of setup. So if you're a developer and you've been writing unit tests, you got no problem with mocking stuff out and writing up a unit test and making your assertions, and it all is good. But once you've got like 5 or 6 microservices feeding into a single page front end application and maybe some proxy layers in there, how do you test all that? And it does get to be pretty tricky. So in the talk, I kind of go over some of the like less on the implementation of actual tools that do it, more on the mentality and the philosophy of how you break that system up into layers and think about it in terms of this kind of test versus that kind of
So
test.
you kind of, you give the value through the heuristic. Think of it like this.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. I mean, because at these conferences, everybody's writing code in a different language and uses a different tool set. So I'm not trying to tell them, this is exactly how you do it in Java and PHP and JavaScript. I mean, those are all just so wildly different that I couldn't cover that in 1 hour. But to give you like an idea of like, here's at a high level what this system looks like, and here's how the testing layers fit into it, that can be
Yeah,
done.
that's why, I was a big fan of Martin Fowler, Ben Orenstein,
Yeah.
Sandy Metz, like those types of people, because when I'd read their content, while, Ben and Sandy were Ruby, you have Martin over in like Java. But the point was, yeah, the code samples are there, but you could virtually like they're you don't need to know necessarily about the code. It's more about the structure and the heuristics of putting it together.
Right. And if as an advice for anybody who's looking to speak at conferences, if you're looking to speak at conferences, it helps a lot if your talks are language and framework agnostic. So the reason is there's just a ton of conferences that take general talks. There's only a few that take, say, PHP or even more specific, one framework in PHP or like a content management system like WordPress. There's just only so many places you can go with that. But if you go into something a little more general, it's a lot easier to get accepted.
So I shouldn't go publish my own micro library on GitHub and give a talk just on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because some of the talks at conferences are basically that. Usually people can only pull that off if they work at a place like Google and they have enough like swing behind them that people just want to see them talk about anything, or
Yeah.
if they're like a conference sponsor, and then they can kind of talk about whatever they want. But for those of us who are unknowns, it helps to have a more generally applicable
But I
talk.
have 3 stars on my project and only 2 of the
Yeah,
accounts are me.
right. Yeah, yeah.
I was looking at I love that when you were speaking at this conference, you then went and wrote content and produced content about the topics you're most excited to see at the conference.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm a big fan of like if a conference is going to do me the favor of allowing me to come speak, then I should do at least a little bit to help market it. What they're doing, and plus it's just an easy idea for content. I think one of the hardest things when you have a blog for a number of years is keeping good ideas flowing, and stuff that you're passionate about writing a little bit about. And so, some months I'll come up with a ton of topics. Some months I just barely have anything. And so this was like I've always done this at conferences that I'm going to or speaking at, just write a little pre-conference blog post about the 5 or 6 talks that I'm most interested in seeing. And usually I'll mention the people giving those talks on Twitter just to say, hey, here's a shout out, like, thanks for coming to the conference and speaking. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I use the Gary V style document, don't create. Have you heard of that?
No, I
All
haven't.
right, he's this business media guy, tech, and he's early investor in a lot of the tech companies, but he's mainly like a business guy who's really good about selling and communicating, and
Mm-hmm.
super, super smart. So he always talks about document, don't create. And that really helped me get over my hump with the book as well, because what I had been doing was sitting down trying to come up with good ideas to share. And instead
Yeah.
now I look at whatever's happening to me, whatever, because all the issues recur, right? There's nothing new.
Right.
Like that was the main premise of the book, is like, I'm not running into new stuff. It's everybody making the same mistakes. And I made the same mistakes too. And then I figured out how to deal with them. And now I don't make those mistakes. And I'm definitely not perfect, but like, I want to communicate this. So now I'm just kind of writing about, I let whatever's happening around me inspire me. And then I don't care if I cover the same topic in a different context with a different story.
Yep.
Yeah. So in your post, you listed the 5 talks that you're most excited to see at Code Smash 2018. Apparently, it's like a monster truck jam. We got Hulk hands, and that I'm building it up in my mind. I apologize if anyone goes to this; they're gonna like be so disappointed. They're so upset. They're like,
I don't. Maybe they won't. It should be fun anyway.
yeah, and then they'll hold out like the hashtag wait for it, and then they'll see Karl's talk at 5 p.m. on the day everybody after all the flights out have happened, and then they're gonna be like, it was worth it. Karl told us about
all worth
distributed
it.
systems.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing better than listening to a talk about testing at 4 p.m. on a Friday. Right.
So sexy.
Like, I know I'm not getting a sexy points for this, but that's all right. It'll be good anyway.
Here's the talk I want to see. You ready for it? Yeah. I want to see neural networks generate Game of Thrones scripts.
Right. Yeah. So have you done any work on machine learning or some just basic natural language processing stuff by chance,
yes.
Joel? Okay. I've done very little. So I'm
me, it's very little.
Beginner.
I booted up a couple projects, played with it, taught it some like Robert Frost poetry, and was like, oh man.
Okay. Yeah. So there's this idea apparently, well, I've read about before, Markov chains, which allow you to sort of, basically you have the computer read, quote unquote, a bunch of text, and then the Markov chain will predict sort of the next word given a specific word. And so it uses the text that it knows about to predict what the next word might be. And so you could do this. I've seen it done for like Harry Potter style books. So the guy like ingested all the Harry Potter books and then wrote a Harry Potter book from his computer, which is cool. This is apparently the next level of that, which uses neural networks, which are, that kind of unsupervised machine learning technique. And that's about the edge of my understanding. So I'm excited to see the rest of it and how it goes.
Right. I just hope that like on the slide that he uses the picture of the blonde dragon girl from Game of Thrones.
Right. What is her name?
I don't know.
I'm not a Game of Thrones guy. I read the first one. Daenerys?
Yeah.
Is that
Daenerys? You got it, man. Daenerys.
I feel like somebody is like cringing listening to this going, oh my God, these guys are idiots.
Hey, it's not my fault if the name doesn't match the face. Come on now.
Yeah.
Right. No, but it's awesome because that's what I've seen. I don't know, I watched like 2 seasons of it, I think. And then we were like, all right, we need more Dragon Girl. Her story was all right, aside from the fact that she's like, uber attractive. There's your Uber for you, buddy.
Sure.
Aside from that fact, her storyline was the most interesting because I liked seeing the dragons. Like I like that the little dragons like hung out with her and stuff. And I'm like, I want, less incest and more dragons. Like, can we, let's do a little bit of that. Right.
Right. Well, Game of Thrones, everybody's got what they come for. So it's got to keep all the fans happy, I'm sure.
Pun intended, I'm sure. All right. So Markov chains. Oh, by the way, speaking of blondes, that we actually have coming on the show in the next 2 weeks, we have Coding Blonde, and she's that's her Instagram handle.
Okay.
coding blonde, and she is a blonde programmer. Was working at Google, and very smart. And I was looking through her posts, and I was like, oh sweet, this is good. And then I started looking through other posts of sort of like influencers, I guess, people with like a lot of followers and what they're doing on Instagram. Like I wanted to feel what the culture was like for
Mhm.
programmers, because I'm 30. How old are you? Right.
29, right there
So
with
we're
you.
right there. So we've kind of like, I had just had started my family, just had my baby girl like 3 months ago, first child and all that
Oh,
stuff.
congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And so I'm kind of like, if a high schooler looked at me, they'd say he's old, right? Which is
Right, right.
crazy for me because I still feel the same as I felt when I was like 13 in my mind, right?
Totally.
And
Yeah.
so it's blowing my mind like how life is working. It's unbelievable. It's very fascinating. So I'm thinking about what the next generation of these people are doing. I was hardcore programming at 13 through 18 all the time, right? And so I'm wondering, like, what are these people doing now? Like, what would Joel be doing then? Because we did not have any of this stuff. We did not have Facebook. We did not have Instagram. We did not have the iPhone. We did not have any of this, right? We had like the Nokia, like,
Right.
come
Yeah.
on now. If my battery pack
You
lit up,
could play. Yeah, you could play Snake on that phone. That was the best
that
part of
was
it.
it. That was it. Right. So I'm wondering, like, all right, well, now that everyone can hang out online, let's go into wherever their communities are and see what they're doing. And so I kind of looked them up on Instagram, and that's like a popular community for that age. Well, I mean, I'm on Instagram personally, anyways, but I wasn't ever going
Sure.
into the group, like the culture of programming on Instagram, right? So I started to go peek into that corner. Here's what I found. Okay, there's about 10, 15 people in the programming space, like with those type of hashtags that have, over 20,000 followers, right? Only like 10 or 15, okay, people, at least in my country, right? At least in the United States.
Right.
And
Yeah.
in eight or nine of them are girls, overwhelmingly female,
Okay.
overwhelmingly female. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, that's so,
Yeah.
like, who's poking around looking at that? Like, I haven't read that article yet.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that because one of the things I've noticed from speaking at these boot camps and meeting people who graduate from boot camps is the diversity level tends to be a lot higher than what I saw going to engineering school a few years back. And that's both women, it's people of color, it's people from poorer backgrounds. It's just all levels of diversity is better out coming out of boot camps. And I wonder if I don't know if that has anything to do with Instagram at all, but I do think it's a really exciting trend because it's like I finally have job applicants who are not just exactly like me and look exactly like me and think exactly like me, like it's been for the last few years. So I applaud it. More power to them.
Yeah, I super don't care about like, it's quite interesting for me because I care like so little about it, but at the same time I'm like, I kind of have to care like about it. And I'll give you some context here. Is like I care about the quality of someone's work and their attributes as like a motivated, accomplished person. Like I don't care about your height, color, size, weight, sex. Like it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that you can produce value and grow what I'm trying to do and help me on my way to helping others, right? Because that's what I'm doing.
Sure.
And so I just try to surround myself with people that produce value. And then I started saying like, it doesn't matter, just find the people with value. But then I realized like I actually came across it like, because I am anthropomorphism is, and you'll like this, right? If you don't know what it means already, because you're super smart. It's when you associate that everyone else around you is similar to you, right? So we do it with our
Yeah.
dogs. We imagine they feel certain ways and yada, yada. Oh, I feel so bad for the dog.
Yeah.
We do it with inanimate objects. We do it with everything. Anthropomorphism. So I thought everyone's kind of like me. Then I realized, dude, they're actually like sexist, racist people. And
Yeah.
I came
Totally.
across like I was in a meeting one day. This is 7 years ago, right when I had this realization. I'm in a meeting one day, and they're talking about hiring someone, and like they actually like didn't want this person because of one of their attributes. And I'm not going to say
Yep.
which one it was because it's such a variety and it could be anything. But I like no joke, jaw hit the floor. I went out of that meeting and I texted like this one friend of mine who's very into like advocating for that group. And by the way, I'm doing a great job with the ambiguity, aren't I? Like, and not
Yeah, that's all
so.
right.
I was texting, that individual, and they just, responded back to me and was like, yep. Because I'd been talking to them 7 years ago, and I said, it's not a big deal. No, like, I was like, this is the modern age. No one my age, like, no one in my group and my
Mhm.
generation is like that. We're modern and coming up. And then I saw something, I was like, oh man. I was like, all right, so now I'm not gonna say like it doesn't matter. Now I'm not gonna say that stuff. Instead, I'm just gonna, constantly set the example for validate people off of the quality of the value that they bring you and what they do, um, and double down on that.
Totally. Yeah. And it's not only the like at the hiring point, at the point of hiring, you also have to worry about it from like does the whole work environment we're creating, is it allowing us to get and keep the best people? So like I don't want to be in a work environment where I have to worry if any woman who joins the engineering team might want to leave in 6 months because it's hostile to her. Like that would be a shame, especially if she's a great engineer.
Right.
But even if she's just an okay engineer, it's expensive to hire people. It's expensive to onboard people. I
Turnover.
don't want to
Yeah.
lose them in 6 months. Yeah. So there's a lot of selfish reasons to be pro, having a diverse and friendly to all workplace. And so I'm a big advocate for it. And anyway,
So
yeah.
the rainforest, like some of the world's largest rainforests, and this like in science, you take any collection of organisms, and what makes them stable is their diversity,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So I love that like aspect of it. Like the rainforest being filled with so many different living things is what keeps it alive, right?
Yeah.
So I love it. So when you write, you were writing a little bit about and talking a little bit about like marketing, like products,
Yeah.
right? So how do you feel like, yeah, how do you have your hand in marketing over at your company or no?
Not too much. We don't do a ton of marketing, true marketing. We do a lot more direct outreach and sales kind of. That's how we get our customers. So I'm less involved now, but because I've worked with consumer sort of facing companies quite a bit in the last few years, like I've gotten to see a lot and understand a lot about marketing. And so I always think it's an interesting space. It was also, when I very first started this journey of figuring out I wanted to be a programmer and all that, I kind of thought I might want to do more of a marketing automation kind of role than a true programming CTO role. And so I explored it a lot more a few years back. And then, now I kind of regularly keep up with what's going on in marketing, especially for startups and side projects and things like that.
Yeah, you're gonna love Gary Vee then.
Yeah, and it's like Gary, is it Vanderchuck or
Vaynerchuk, yeah,
something
yeah.
like that? Yeah, yeah. So I have heard his name. I don't think I follow him directly right now, but I definitely have heard of him.
Yeah, so we actually like took I was listening to him for a couple months, and we took his information and we're executing it with the podcast, and because for no reason other than to just share value with people. And I kind of and
Mhm.
I always call myself like a life scientist because all I do is go around testing things and seeing what works and then doing more of them and then figuring out what doesn't work and then moving forward. So I said, oh, well, you know what, let's take this guy who is clearly growing his company because it's huge, right? And I've
Right.
watched him grow it. And let's take and he sits up there and he goes, this is the advice, this is how you do it, right? This is exactly how you do it. And I can tell you all of this because none of you will do it.
Right.
And so I'm
The
like,
execution is the
yeah,
hard
so I'm
part.
like,
Yeah.
oh, you know what? I was talking about that, with the execution of the very simple things over and over and over. I learned how to execute. It was difficult, and I'm always working on it and growing on it. It's always a thing that I'm working on. But I said, you know what? Let's take this guy's advice and execute it. Boom, 8 weeks, like tremendous results.
Okay, cool.
Highly
Well,
suggested.
yeah, it's like you don't hire people because they've read the most books or had the most theoretical understanding of things. You hire them because they have real hands-on experience doing stuff, and that's the hard part of any job.
Oh yeah, we're always battling over here, thinking like whenever we come up with an idea, what we'll see is like, all right, let's do this, and then instantly the next words out of your mouth is a cue that builds up of the things that have to be done before you do it. Right?
Yeah.
We're like, oh, let's
Yeah.
let's live stream. Oh, we need this. Oh, now we need this. Oh, and now we need this. Now we need this. I'm like, ooh, like it got out of control, And then we
Yeah.
boiled it down, and I said, look, and we did it together because I do everything with like my team. I said, let's just say like, how do we get the image on the screen? Like
Yeah.
let's like
Yeah.
only do what's required. Let's MVP this thing and like only
Yeah.
do what's
Step
required.
zero, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so we did it. So do you have any big any other than the speaking and the writing, which
Hmm.
or you can have you can video that, right? I want to see your talk.
Yeah, so occasionally they record video. I haven't asked the people at CodeMash, but if nothing else, I'll record kind of a screen and audio capture if that's all I have available. So I'll have some recording of that. There's a couple of recordings I have on my blog. There's a tab at the top for speaking. I think that may have some videos too. So getting some recordings there. Yeah.
So there's Amazon Basics, you know, like super cheap. They have a $10 or like $12 tripod with like a $10
Yeah.
iPhone
Yeah. Yeah.
attachment thing.
Yeah, I was looking into that actually. That was my first thought, and then I was like, "Well, I don't know if I want to have one more thing to
Carry.
deal with and make sure it works." Yeah, and carry it. So I could do that too. I'll think about it for next time.
Oh, I just want to see you. Like I want to see the talk.
Yeah.
You know, like
Oh,
if you put your phone in do not disturb, then you can use it
right.
pretty effectively. As long as like you make sure your do not disturb settings like are really strict because your wife
Right.
will call you 3 times and the
Of
recording will
course. Yeah.
stop.
Yeah. Totally.
Amazon Alexa, you playing with that?
I have not. I play a little bit with the Google's assistants because I have an Android phone, a Google Pixel, and they're pretty big on having their assistant do things. It does not work for me yet. It is not good. I don't know, robust enough to fit into any workflows that I use at this point. I think there's a lot of potential there, but like when I say something like add a to-do list item, Google wants to add it to its to-do list thing that I don't use. Like, I would like to be able to customize that. And I hear you can do more of that with Alexa. Is that right?
Yeah, Alexa's, pretty amazing. We have both at the office.
Okay.
And we're primarily using them for hype music.
That's worthwhile.
Yeah, maybe we'll have some Eminem on one, and then some Eye of the Tiger on other. Oh, and then of
Right.
course, and then we'll queue up with like a third one, Thunderstruck, so we can switch to it after it gets upbeat enough.
Yeah, totally.
Fantastic. All right. Anything else that you want to communicate to our like group, like to these we got modern CTOs, crazy amount of us, and most of us went from developer CTO. Do you have any advice or any other thing you want to communicate?
I think we've covered a lot of what I always give people as advice is just, that networking is a huge part of this and meeting people and knowing people, staying in touch with people, but also, reading and learning and staying on top of what's out there, but not getting too caught up in it. It's a daily struggle. But yeah, if anybody wants to continue the conversation, I'm always happy to like chat, whether that's just a little Twitter interaction or it's a longer email or somebody wants to hop on a phone call, all that's good. And you can put whatever contact info you have for me in the show notes.
Absolutely.
But Karl L. Hughes on Twitter and GitHub and most other places.
And please do not send dev-related questions or CTO-related questions to the actor, Karl Hughes.
Right. Yeah, Karl Hughes with no L. He's probably not me. It's the guy in England who's an actor. If you're interested in an actor, though, he is the one to go to. I am not.
He is.
So there's a Karl for everything.
That's awesome. How great would it be if like Karl Hughes, the actor, started looking into programming because everyone kept reaching out to him?
That son of a gun. That as long as he doesn't change his branding. I mean, he's got an IMDb page. I can't compete with
He's
that.
going to show up at your talk and he's going to start arguing with you about testing.
Right. That would be a sad day for me.
Oh no, you got to see if you had your camera rolling though, you're gonna be YouTube famous, right?
Right. Well, that's true. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for coming and sharing.
Thank you,
talking.
Joel.
It's been like, dude, I love calls like this. Karl is awesome.
Oh, I had a great time too, Joel, and I look forward to listening to this episode, but other episodes mostly of the podcast, as well as the book. And does it have a due date when it's coming out?
Yeah, so we just did editing, and we're thinking that the safe date is March, but we're imagining that's going to start shipping in February.